Okay, so we are in our first mini chapel, new segment that we're going to be doing where in each one of these pods, we are going to dive into a scripture that relates to your life. It may not relate to your life, but when it comes to scripture relating to your life, this scripture right here is yours. 100%.
Mhm.
So we are in Genesis 32, verses 22 through 32. This is the story where Jacob wrestles with God. And what happens to him is where you're going to see why this relates so much to Sailor. So it says, the same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. I just want to stop there for a second. The Bible records history, not giving a cosign here for guys to have more than 1 wives and all of that stuff. Just wanted to make that clear. Right? Okay, so picking up in verse 23, it says, he took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had, and Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for the day has broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with man and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of that place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. What a story. So, just a little bit of context for anybody who may not know where this is taking place in Scripture. You are looking at the patriarchic family of Israel, and this is where the nation of Israel gets their name. It's through Jacob. And so he is coming back to his homeland after he has stolen his older brother and only older brother by a couple of seconds because they were twins. They're born, he's grabbing his ankle, and he spends his entire life trying to take Esau's blessing and birthright. And he ultimately swindles him into doing it. He then leaves because he feels like Esau's going to kill him. He gets married, he gets swindled, has 2 wives, has a bunch of kids, and now he's coming back to his homeland and he's terrified to go see Esau. And he wrestles with God before he makes that final little trek in his journey to go meet his brother face to face again. So that's where we are in the biblical timeline. What's happening here in this story, there's so much to take away, but Sailor, I would love to just see your insights as this verse, or really this passage of scripture, really just speaks to you.
Yeah. I have yet to come across any passage of scripture that relates more to my life than this one does. So it's been really interesting to kind of, again, chip away at that block. So this is actually the passage too. That night I went over to my pastor's house. This is the passage that he brought up to me. And I had read the book of Genesis before, but obviously before I wasn't focused on the hip part because I hadn't experienced that yet. So it was just like a groundbreaking thing. But as I've continued to read this, I think I've read it probably 20 times now, just because I don't want to miss anything. And I've listened to like the audio on the Bible app, just because you hear different things, you read different things. So I've kind of just been taking a deep dive into it. But the I have 4 main points that I've kind of pulled out of it so far. So the first is the transformation through struggle. So he wasn't blessed until he said to God, I'm not leaving until you bless me. So he wasn't, he had to go through all these things where he was running away from himself. He felt guilty. He had shame. He was running away from God. He had all this that was weighing him down. And whether he knew it was weighing him down as much, whatever it might be, he still had to go through those struggles to see something on the other side. So it wasn't for nothing.
That's so good.
Um, mhm. And then the second is God's faithfulness despite human failure. So even though we go through these struggles, we might start relying on different things that isn't God and things that might pull us further away from God. He still is chasing after us. It's kind of like something I said, you don't have to draw close to God for him to draw near to you. Like he's always there. So he shows faithfulness, he shows grace despite all our failures and no matter how hard we push away. But it's the third point is the identity and the naming. So which really hits home for me. Um, so when I read this, I was like, these are like this relates to me because I mean, what are the chances it's his hip? And I did a little bit of digging into that too. And in the ancient cultures, your hip joint actually symbolizes strength and stability. So when you have your hip joint and it's dislocated or it's not operating, to me it felt like I didn't have any strength, my stability's gone, it was messing up my back, it was messing up everything. So I think though having that like not having that joint and not having that ability is your strength and your reliance on yourself moving to reliance on God. So I could no longer rely on myself and I had to go straight to God. And it's the same thing that Jacob did. Yeah, it's the same thing that Jacob did. Um, so it's just, and something too was that hit me really hard. I have it written down here. It's God didn't dislocate Jacob's hip out of punishment or to destroy Jacob, but he actually did it to rename him Israel and give him a new identity and a new identity, a new name, and so that he didn't what's the word I'm looking for? He gave him a new identity, a new name, and so yeah, so he wasn't self reliant. So I mean, he crippled Jacob to remind him not to be self reliant on, and but to continue to draw back to him. So when I read the part where he wrestled with God and he was bold and said, I'm not letting go until you bless me, I kind of saw that as like a spiritual showdown. So he was having with like his past and his guilt and his future. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to any of that, but
Yeah, no,
that's kind of
absolutely.
just what I got out of it.
I mean, everything you just shared is so good. It's so good. Now, what I would add is for me, like you had shared, there's really two big takeaways from me here in this scripture. He is unwilling to let go, which if you look at his life up until this point, that's who he is. That is his character. He is the guy that's unwilling to let go. His name Jacob actually means heel grabber. So even that goes back to his birth, where he is grabbing the heel of his brother as they're being born. Which, I mean, if you're just thinking about what that must have looked like, must have been gnarly. As the mom's giving birth, one kid's coming out and the other kid's just got a chokehold on his ankle, right?
Hmm.
Now, God changes his name because he's wrestling with him, unwilling to let him go. He always is wanting bless. He's always wanting to be blessed. He's not leaving a situation without something. That's just his character, how he is kind of hardwired. And God changes his name to Israel, wrestling with God. He gives him a whole new identity. And what I love so much about that is that's what God does for us. When we surrender to him, realizing that it's not on our own strength and stability, like you had brought up with the hip, that we're able to really accomplish anything. It's through God's strength. That's when everything changes. So God may not change your name, but he does change your identity. Who you were before encountering God and who you are after encountering God, two completely different people. At least it should be. And I love that this scripture ends with he walks away with a limp. Jacob, now Israel, lives the rest of his life with a limp. It wasn't just a moment that he had with God, it was a moment that led to a lifetime of remembering who God is and what God would do in his life. And that takeaway for us is everything. As an athlete, who you were before finding Jesus and putting your faith in Jesus, not even finding Jesus, because Jesus wasn't lost. We're the ones who are lost. So let me rephrase that. Who you were before Jesus found you and scooped you up in your mess, and who you are afterwards are two completely different people. And you should walk in that. And the walk looks different. Jacob's walk before getting into this wrestling match with God was drastically different than his walk after this wrestling match with God. He walked with a limp. So his walk is different. So much so that all the nation of Israel changed the way that they would eat. Because they're now thinking about what Jacob went through in wrestling with God, and he walked with a limp. So our lives completely change when we have an encounter with God. When we put our faith in Jesus, who we were is no longer who we are. Our identity shifts, and our whole walk, our whole lives should be completely different. People should look at us and see something different, and we should be confident in that. No longer wrestling on our own, but rather wrestling with God and knowing he's going to take us places that we could never take ourselves.
I have 1 point for that. I wrote it down earlier. It's blessing doesn't come through striving, but through surrender. So
say that
I
again.
had to do that with my blessing doesn't come through striving, but through surrender.
Say it one more time for the people in the back.
Blessing doesn't come through striving, but through surrender.
That's so good.
Fully surrendering to Christ is
That's
the
so
only way you'll receive your blessing.
Facts. And that's what God had said to him. He said, you have striven with man and with God.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's so good.